Jay Inslee's ass out of office in November? Are you ready to send common sense to Olympia? Well, we are doing it. We, the people, are doing it this time. Thank you for braving the cold. Thank you for braving the wind. Was this a great show or what? Unbelievable. Do you love this state? I love this state. And we are going to love this state a lot more after I'm inaugurated. We are going to return common sense to this government. We are going to get it off of our backs and out of our pocketbooks and return common sense to Olympia. That's what I'm all about. That's why I have been traveling around this state for the last 15 months. And we have just over 9 days to go, right? It is happening. How many of you have been to a Culp campaign rally before? How many of you, this is the first time? Excellent, excellent. Thank you all for being here. I grew up in Washington State. I've lived here my entire life except for 4 years in the military. I've been married to my wife Barb for 43 years this year. And I have to tell you, she will make an excellent First Lady of Washington State. We've got 2 grown sons and 7 grandkids that live over by Olympia. And at the age of 19, I served in the United States Army. I've been in the world-famous 101st Airborne Division. I served under one of the greatest presidents of my lifetime, President Ronald Reagan. Yes. Yes. I went through drill sergeant school at Fort Leonard, Missouri, where I then helped to turn civilians into soldiers. I was the honor graduate of my advanced individual training class, as well as the non-commissioned officers academy with the 101st Airborne Division. I served overseas in Korea for a year. And after 4 years in the military department, I decided to move our young family back to the state that we love, back to Washington State, where we grew up. And we lived in the Olympia area, and that's where I learned the building trades. I worked for other people for a few years, and then in 1988, I started my own construction business, working right out of Olympia. Started that from nothing with 1 employee. I built that business up over 20 years to where I had multiple crews and trucks doing jobs all around Puget Sound. And then in 2010, a job opening came open for a police officer in the city of Republic, where I went to high school, where I met Barb, where she had lived her entire life. And at the age of 49, I decided to realize my childhood dream of becoming a police officer. And I told Barb, I said, I'm 49. If I don't realize my childhood dream, I'm going to be too old pretty soon. And she said, well, you're kind of too old already, but go for it. So I did. I've been a patrol officer, canine handler. I've been a narcotics detective for about 3 years. And for the last 4 years, I've been the chief of police in Republic. Has anybody been to Republic before? All right, well, you need to go. It's a beautiful mountain town up in the northeastern corner of the state. And it's absolutely beautiful. So I was going about my business, being the chief of police in Republic. And you remember back in 2018, you remember that anti-gun initiative that passed in this state? Yeah, boo is right. Thanks to our Attorney General for writing the title to that and confusing some people, because I've talked to a lot of people who voted for that because they read the title. It was all about gun and school safety, right? But it was full of 30 pages of garbage. So thanks to the Attorney General for disguising that garbage with a title. But the day after that passed, I was asked by citizens if I'm going to start arresting military-age young adults, 18 to 21 years old. That law made it against the law for them to buy a semi-automatic rifle, right? If they already owned one, they couldn't leave their property with it. And so I was asked the day after that passed if I was going to start arresting those people. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that because, number one, I took an oath of office to uphold and defend the Constitution. Yeah. And I wasn't going to break my oath of office. And number two, The Washington State Constitution is even more explicit than the Second Amendment, which we all know, right? But Article 1, Section 24 of the Washington State Constitution says that the right of the individual citizen to bear arms in defense of himself or the state shall not be impaired. And I raised my right hand and I swore an oath to uphold and defend that. And I knew it was my duty to defend citizens' rights because in the same Washington State Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, it says that the power is inherent in the people and government is there to protect citizens' rights. So I knew that it was my duty to protect citizens' rights. I was not about to violate that oath. That stance, unbeknownst to me, got me on the national news, right? I didn't know that was going to happen. This is the series of events that have led me down this road to running for governor. Got me on the national news. I was on Fox and Friends. I was on Tucker Carlson's show. Yeah, we love Tucker Carlson, right? So I did hundreds of radio and newspaper interviews all across the country. And that led me to writing a book called American Culp. In December of 2018, I wrote that book. And it went on Amazon and became a #1 bestseller, which led me to being invited around the state to speak to Republican Party Lincoln Day dinners and sportsman shows all across this state every weekend in the spring of 2019 and into the summer. I was traveling somewhere around the state speaking to citizens groups about our rights and responsibilities and the responsibility and duty of public servants to stand up for citizens' rights. And that led to people asking me to run for governor. You know, I didn't grow up wishing one day that I'd be a politician, right? My childhood dream, I was living, being a police officer. But with so many people asking me that every weekend when I went out to speak at groups, every place I went, people were saying the same thing. We need to get rid of Jay Inslee. We need somebody to stand up for our rights the way you did in 2018. And so in July, I talked to Barb, kind of like I did when I told her I was going to be a police officer, and I said, you know, if I don't stand up with both feet and jump in here and try to help turn this state around, I would regret it for the rest of my life. And I don't like to live with regret. So that is what led me down this path. And in 9 hours, 9 days, and how many hours, I don't know, my phone's dead. But it's been a long day. We hit the road this morning at 7:30 and got into town a couple hours ago. It's been a long day, so my battery's dead. But it's a little over 9 days, and we are going to turn this state around. We are going to make history in Washington State. And it's all because of we the people. I'm not supported by big business. Large corporations didn't make donations to my campaign. This campaign is supported by we the people. With an average donation of $80 per person, we have raised over $3 million. And that is funding the TV commercials that we have running right now, getting the word out to people that are undecided. And there's quite a few of those apparently. You know, did you guys see the debate? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's not quite as many undecided after that happened, right? That's what happens when common sense meets a career politician. So I am very, very humbled by the support that we're getting all over this state, not just from conservative-minded people, but from people who are telling me that they're Democrats. They've been lifelong Democrats, never thought about voting for a Republican until this time. They see what the far left is doing. You know, the crime everywhere, the dirty needles and the tent encampments. They're seeing what's going on. They're seeing the lawlessness. They're seeing the homelessness. They're seeing prisoners being let out of our state penitentiaries, and they are sick and tired of what the far left and Jay Inslee is pushing. And for the first time, they're voting for a Republican. And that is how we're going to win. And then you look at the way that this virus was handled by our governor. Nope, there are people from all across the political spectrum that own businesses, that have kids that are supposed to be in school, that don't want a person sitting in the governor's office dictating to us how we're going to live our lives, whether we're going to go to work or whether we got to stay home and go broke. They don't like it any more than anybody else does. You know, he decided what businesses could open, which ones had to close, if you were essential or non-essential. Well, I got news for the current governor. We are all essential. This is not the first virus that we've had, right? We've had bird flu, swine flu, they come and they go. And when I'm governor, I will have a firm grasp on the Constitution and understand citizens' rights. And I will have press conferences with the medical professionals to explain to everyone what's going on, what we should do to protect ourselves, our family, and our business. You know, what might happen if we don't follow the medical advice. And then make sure the supply chain is as open as possible for equipment that we need. But then let free individual citizens decide what's best for themselves, their family, and their business. That's how you govern a free state, right? The governor's job is to run the executive branch of the state government, not every aspect of our lives and our children and our businesses. That's not the job of the governor. He needs to stay in his lane and manage and supervise and lead the executive branch of the state government, and let us decide how we're going to live our lives and raise our families. Agreed? We need to be taught about the Washington State Constitution in school, because a lot of people, because we're not taught it, they don't know. They don't know rights that are taken away. Article 1, Section 7 of the Washington State Constitution, something that our governor raised his right hand and swore an oath to uphold and defend, right? It says that no citizen shall be disturbed in their private affairs. We have definitely been disturbed in our private affairs, right? It's not going to happen after this election, I guarantee it. I will have a firm grasp on the rule of law and that Constitution. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I'm working for one special interest group when I get to Olympia, and that's the special interest group of we the people. That's who I am, that's where I come from. Served in the military, worked, built a business for over 20 years. By the way, I sold that business to my youngest son, who still runs that business to this day when I became a police officer. Unbelievable what's going on. You know, our forefathers fought and died against the world superpower to bring freedom and liberty to America, right? And here we are in 2020 with a governor dictating to us whether we're going to work or whether we're not, what we're going to wear, right? He basically put his finger in everyone's face and said, you and you and you and you are going to put a mask on and keep it on until there's a vaccine. I don't want one person having that kind of power over our lives. That is not freedom and liberty. That's more like you would expect in North Korea, right? With a dictator. You can't tell me that a barbershop or a mom and pop cafe or a salon or barbershop, any business can't operate safely. But Jay Inslee says that a big box store with 150, 200 people in it is okay, but you had to shut down if you had one customer. Makes absolutely no sense. The virus doesn't know which buildings it can go into, which it can't, right? It's about control. We know how to operate safely. We know how to make ourselves safe. The governor is not our medical professional. He's not my healthcare provider. He's not our boss. He works for we the people, right?
He's supposed to.
And then you see the way that he handled these riots. We need to restore law and order in this state, and we will after I'm elected in November. Guaranteed. You know, we all have a First Amendment right. We can peaceably assemble. In fact, we're doing that right now. Doesn't it feel great? That's our First Amendment right. We can peaceably assemble. We can speak our mind. We can go to the church of our choice. We have freedom of the press. right? But when that turns violent, when people start looting stores, lighting buildings and cars on fire, throwing rocks and frozen water bottles at our police, that's no longer a First Amendment protected right. That's a crime. It's called rioting. And when the local law enforcement and the state patrol started losing control in Seattle, he sent in the National Guard at their request, right? But what did he do first? He disarmed them. He sent our young men and women in uniform into a violent situation without the means to protect themselves or other people. That will never happen when I am governor. When things start getting out of hand, I'll have the National Guard spun up with the means to protect themselves and other people. And when the local law enforcement requests backup, they'll be there within minutes, not hours and days like with the current governor. And they will help the local law enforcement to arrest the criminals and put their ass in jail where they belong. There's people that own businesses in there, people that work there, people that live there. They deserve law and order just like everyone else. And there will never be a time where we will pull everyone out and start negotiating with criminals. Ever. When you allow bad behavior, you get more and more bad behavior, right? It can't go on like that. We have to have law and order, and I will restore law and order to this state. We deserve parks that aren't filled with garbage and tent cities and feces and needles. This is disgusting. This is not the state that I grew up in. This is not the state that we deserve right now, and we will get that back. You know, I absolutely love this state. You know, I used to take my kids when they were young in the 80s and 90s. We used to go downtown Seattle. We used to go to the Space Needle. I went there when I was young. My parents took me down. I would not take a family down there now. It's disgusting. And it's permeating out all across this state because it's being allowed. You know, I talked about this when I first decided to run. In my announcement speech, I talked about this so-called homeless crisis, right? It's not all about homes. It's mostly an addiction and a mental health crisis that we're facing in this state. And it's not being addressed by the current governor. He lost certification to Western State Hospital. Right? So people with mental health problems aren't getting the help they need. And along with that decertification went millions of dollars from the federal government to help people that are in mental health crisis. I have experienced this many times as a police officer, and it happens every day and every night all across this state where someone tries to take their life and a police officer takes them to the hospital where they meet with a first level mental health counselor. And that counselor calls all around the state to look for a bed in a facility where that person can get a higher level of care. And 9 times out of 10, there is not a place for them to go, and they're turned right back out on the street. That is ridiculous. It will not happen. We have to fix that problem. That is because of piss poor management at the state level from Jay Inslee. I have no clue why anyone would vote for him. Did you see how many times he lied in that debate?
Yeah.
He didn't know that he was taking taxpayer money, at least he said he didn't know, and paying a global consulting company $164,000 a week. He said he didn't know anything about what I was talking about. But it happened, it's the truth, and it's been in the news media. Did you notice after that debate how much the news media talked about it? Almost zero. I can guarantee you if it would have been reversed and I would have lost, it would have been all over the place, right? Very few news organizations are even covering it. It's unbelievable. You guys are awesome. You know that? We are going to take this state back, you guys. It is happening. It is happening. Like I said earlier, Democrats are not voting for him. You know, a lot of them are walking away. The walk-away movement is strong in Washington State. And we're going to find out just how strong, and Jay Inslee is going to get a rude awakening on Election Day. You know, when I served in the military, something happened that made me very, very proud to be an American. When I was 1983, I was a sergeant in the Army. I had orders to go overseas to protect South Korea. And it was a hardship tour, which means that your family can't come with you. You know, I was married to Barb. We had a 3-year-old Nick, and our youngest son Adam was a 1.5 years old. And I had to go over there by myself. I had to leave them for a year because I was stationed up close to the DMZ, which is the border between North Korea and South Korea. And while I was there, I participated in a joint military exercise. Well, I wonder if that wind can pick up anymore. Just joking. But I participated in a joint military exercise called Team Spirit. And that's where every branch of the South Korean military and every branch of the U.S. military did a joint military exercise all across South Korea. And I was in the Army, and so we traveled in convoys, military jeeps and trucks loaded with equipment and GIs. And we would convoy from one location to another and travel along country roads around South Korea. And along those roads was dotted little villages surrounded by rice paddies. And whenever our convoy would get close to one of those villages, all the people that lived there would come running up to the edge of the road, and they'd line the edge of the road as we drove by. And they would have big smiles on their faces, and they'd be waving with one hand. And in their other hand, they would have little American flags. And it made me so very proud to be an American, knowing that we were there protecting their country, and we had saved their country, right, in the Korean War from the communist North. And those people did not care what color our skin was. They didn't care what our age, our education, or our income was. They just cared that we were Americans, right? And we were there to protect them. We were part of the greatest nation in the history of the world. That's all they cared about. And it made me very, very proud to be an American. You know, we need to remember that here at home. The left all the time wants to separate us. They want to divide us by the color of our skin, by our age, our education, our income. We need to not allow that. We are all part of one race, and that's the human race, and we are all Americans. Part of the greatest nation in the history of the world. We need to remember that here at home. And we need to stand up for that. There have been far too many flag draped coffins in our country's history for us not to be active and involved and make sure everyone we know is registered to vote and that they fill their ballot out and get it turned in. And we will return common sense to Olympia and lead Washington's comeback. Thank you guys. God bless you. I will be hanging around if anybody wants to come up talk to me. God bless you all. Thank you so much.